Well, hey there, and welcome to APUS History with Lennox. And today, in Topic 3, which covers 1754 to 1800, we are going to look at the philosophical foundations of the American Revolution. Now, if you watched my last video, a lot was going on to increase the tension in the colonies between the colonists and the government in England. But the colonists still were not near even discussing revolution. So what changed? What led to this point? The big idea I want you to walk away with today and be able to explain is how and why the attitudes of the colonists about their government changed in the years leading up to the start of the American Revolution. Now, we know that we've already seen some unification within the colonies. In 1765, the Stamp Act Congress came together as a result of some of the taxation policies and legislation that was being passed by the English Parliament. And within that Congress, they petitioned the king for a repeal of those taxes, specifically the Stamp Act. But in those conversations, in those meetings, revolution was not even discussed. It wasn't even seen as a solution to the issues that they were dealing with. And when they petitioned the king and parliament to repeal the Stamp Act, they did that as British citizens. Now jump forward about 9 years to 1774, when the colonists come together as another representative body. In the meeting of the First Continental Congress, 12 of the 13 colonies are going to send representatives. The only one standing out is Georgia. And the big question that they were addressing is what to do about the increasing legislation coming out of England that was threatening their liberty. And what they decided going forward was that they needed to resist any further violation of their freedoms. But still, in 1774, the topic of revolution did not come up. They were looking for a resolution to continue their relationship with England. What happened next will set the chain of events towards revolution into action. Because what England does is completely refuses any discussion of compromise. In fact, they looked at the colonists as being rebellious against their authority. So the question then is, how did the colonists get to this point? And the simple answer is they were inspired by the Enlightenment. Now, in a previous video, I talked about the Enlightenment movement and how it came over from Europe and swept through the colonies. And it really started with the publication of the Two Treatises of Government by John Locke. In this work, he introduced the idea that government can only exist through the consent of the governed, meaning the people hold the power, and only they can give that power to a governing authority. Essentially, the people allow a government to exist. Within his work, we're also going to see John Locke introduce the idea of natural rights. According to Locke, we are all endowed by our Creator with natural rights, those rights being life, liberty, and property. And since those rights come from God, not government, government cannot take those rights away. He also introduced this idea of self-rule, something that has been prevalent in the colonies since the 1600s. This idea was that the people should be governed by a selection of representatives, and that governing authority does not come through hereditary lines or bloodlines. So Locke introduces us to the consent of the governed, natural rights, and self-rule. But he wasn't the only political Enlightenment thinker. Jean-Jacques Rousseau is also going to emphasize the idea that governing power comes from the people. And what essentially happens through the creation of a government is the creation of a social contract. And within the framework of this social contract, the people hold the power to govern. They willingly give up some of that power to a governing authority. And in turn, the government agrees to protect the natural rights of the people. So under the social contract, if laws are passed that the people don't consent to, the people can then determine those laws are null and void. And a perfect example of that was occurring in the colonies is taxation without representation. A third and final Enlightenment thinker I want to talk about is the Baron de Montesquieu. Montesquieu argued for a specific form of government, a republican form of government, which mirrored what Rousseau was talking about, a governing body created through representatives of the people. Montesquieu also said that the structure of this government should have three individual branches: a legislative, an executive, and a judicial branch. And those branches should have individual powers, but also the power to check and balance each other out. So not one branch of government should ever have too much power. So these Enlightenment ideas are spreading throughout the colonies. And remember, at the exact same time, the Great Awakening was also bringing a spiritual revival to the colonies. And so what many, if not most of the colonists started to believe was that they had been blessed with a true form of liberty, and any threat to that liberty would be a threat to their very lives. But, and this is the big one, in 1774, when the First Continental Congress got together, they remained loyal, and in fact, they pledged their loyalty to King George and the English government. So how did it start to change? Well, jump forward to January of 1776, and a little pamphlet comes out called Common Sense, and its author was Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine was also a follower of the Enlightenment as well as the Great Awakening, and using everyday language that anybody could understand, not just the highly educated, he argued for independence. And he did it using examples of the Bible, including verses that talked about the folly of a monarchy, as well as the teachings of the Enlightenment. This is when things started to change. You see, the elites, the wealthy, they understood the ideas of the Enlightenment. Paine took the time to explain the ideas to the common people, those who might not have an extensive education. And as people started to read Common Sense, it caught fire, meaning his ideas and his thoughts caught fire and spread throughout the entire population. Some of the elites looked at Paine's work as very simple-minded. However, what Paine successfully did was he gave a voice to the people of the colonies who felt that remaining with England going forward was not what was best for them. That next year, 1776, the Second Continental Congress is going to come together, and it is then that they put forth a resolution for independence. They will ask Thomas Jefferson to draft what would become known as the Declaration of Independence. And within that document, he will invoke the words of the Enlightenment thinkers when he talks about our unalienable rights, as well as the social contract that we have with our government. And that will launch us into the American Revolution, which will be covered in another video. Well, hopefully you walk away and you have a clear understanding of the philosophical foundations of the revolution. If you have any questions, go ahead and post them in the comments. But we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.